There we go. Rookie mistake. Try again. Good morning, and welcome to the June 25th agenda meeting of the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission. I am Commissioner Audrey Partridge, and I will be acting as chair for today, as Chair Sieben and Vice Chair Sullivan are not available. I will start by taking the roll of other commissioners who are present. Commissioner Hom.
Here.
Commissioner Tuma.
Here.
And I am here, so we have a quorum. We have 3 items on the agenda today, and I hope that we may be able to wrap by lunch. If not, we'll stop so everyone can eat, but let's all hope that we'll be done.
Hold that over their heads.
Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into item number 1. Ms. Brown-Huss, please introduce the item when you're ready.
Good morning, Chair Partridge and Commissioners. Agenda item number 1 is docket E015M26126 involving Minnesota Power in the matter of Minnesota Power's petition for approval of modification to its large power tariff. The question before the Commission is, should the Commission approve Minnesota Power's request to withdraw without prejudice the very large customer class petition as filed on February 18, 2026? Late filed comments from Minnesota Power were received on June 18th and distributed to the Commissioners. Tuesday, Commissioner Hom filed new decision option 7. Hard copies of the compiled late filed documents are available in the back of the room. Staff has no further comments.
All right. We do not plan to have opening remarks for this today, so I will just pass it over to Commissioner Hom.
Thank you, Chair Partridge. So I have to start this. I think whenever I talk about data center, I have to say this. Minnesota is not a PJM state. I think a lot of public and a lot of you are reading media discussing about data center impact to the ratepayers. That is mainly for PJM states because they are due to their regulatory structure. You will repeatedly hear this from me because we have to give everybody a reminder, and then also public who doesn't pay attention to the every docket, but when they come to this docket, I have to give a reminder to everybody that we are not PJM states. Being said, also, this docket is not about approving, disapproving data center. This docket is about how to protect our ratepayers if data center is being served by our utility. When I said we are not PJM state, that means Minnesota is a vertically integrated state. Under the regulatory compact, our utility has an obligation to serve. Our utility cannot discriminate who to serve, who not to serve. If large industrial customer shows up, asking them to provide electric service, they have to provide it. That's why this docket is very important to making sure that we are protecting our ratepayers when they're serving this new large industrial customer. Also, we are very unique, not necessarily only one state, but among many states, we have a very clean, clear legislative mandates. All those data center has to pay their fair share, and that language is very clearly written in the statute. I think there is no arguments about whether data center will be served at the average cost versus incremental cost. They have to pay all incremental cost is by the statute. Also, there are some public has a concern that data center may have a negative impact to our 2040 carbon-free goal. It is also very clearly written in the statute. Every time utility bring ESA, which is Energy Service Agreements, after we have this baseline tariff, each time they are bringing specific agreement with large industrial customer, in that process, they have to show that it's not going to delay their 2040 carbon-free goal. It is very clear. So even though it is very clear, at times I keep repeating this information because sometimes public doesn't pay attention, even though we are regularly participating in commission proceeding, we may not know and we are not paying attention to it. So that's why I'm keep repeating this information. A lot of you, it's a redundant information. Hopefully bear in mind that we have to explain to public about this. We cannot let public to be in the worry about whether their rate will go up because of this data center. So this proceeding is about protecting our customer from any possible negative rate impact from it. So I think that's overall my statement on this issue, but also I think I have some question to Minnesota Power. So Minnesota Power, you filed the June 18th letter. So there are two major components. One is you can refile this baseline tariff by July 15th. Is it still true?
Chair Partridge, Commissioner Hom, Matt Brodeen on behalf of Minnesota Power. Yes, Commissioner Hom, we can file by July 15th the new very large power tariff.
So if we revise decision option 5, and there is a placeholder for the date, if we place that with July 15th, 2026, you are okay with it?
Commissioner Hom, yes.
Okay, thank you. And also in that letter, you show some component of your filed ESA, and I read those language, and then I asked our legal to making sure that whether that is good enough to making sure that we can bifurcate this process. In your understanding, that's true, and that's what you are trying to say in that letter.
Commissioner Hom, that's correct.
So my decision option new 7, I think it's still redundant, but as I said before, I'm trying to keep repeating this redundancy to make sure that everybody understands and everybody's on the same baseline. So I am trying to memorialize your letter stating that regardless of the order of the approval or process, that will be automatically reflected into your ESA.
Commissioner Hom, that is correct. I believe your new decision option 7 summarizes the provisions in the ESA that point back to, because several provisions in the ESA indicate that the cost and any incremental cost that has to be taken on by the large power class will be governed by the tariff and not by the ESA, and so it points to the tariff, whichever tariff happens to be applicable to Google, and in this case, if we put a new very large power tariff out there and Google qualifies for that, then that tariff will govern.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask?
Sure, go ahead.
Now I'll ask Department and OAG. So you heard discussion so far. Do you still have a concern with allowing MP to withdraw current tariff and then refile it by July 15th?
Ms. McAllister.
Chair, Commissioners, we believe that HOM's new 7 addresses this concern.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, thank
Amy
you.
McAllister for the Minnesota Department of Commerce.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Tuma.
No, it's okay.
Mr. Schultz?
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Peter Schultz with the Office of the Attorney General, Residential Utilities Division. With regard to HOM New 7, I think the clarification is helpful because to us, that's not what the contract says. It says a tariff that supersedes or replaces a large power tariff will apply. In our understanding of the new tariff, it will not replace or supersede the large power tariff. It will be a new tariff for a new class of customer. So I'm not sure that it seems to us that the contract's still going to need to be updated. And the other concern that your decision option doesn't address is without an approved. We were hoping that we would have some guidance from the Commission before we have to give our final blessing or opinion on this ESA on what the tariff will look like. Because as you know, tariffs and ESAs work closely together to ensure that the customer pays all costs attributable to them. So it's a little tricky. The reason we objected is because it's a procedural bind of not having a tariff and not knowing when we're going to have we know we're going to have a proposal on July 15th. We don't know the final form at that date. And so particularly lacking a tariff, an approved tariff at the time we're going to be evaluating this ESA, which we've already begun doing, but lacking a tariff, we don't know what the rate's going to be. And it's hard to estimate whether the revenues will cover the cost if you don't know the tariff rate. And then finally, there's one other point I wanted to make, but I can stop there for now. So we still believe that, you know, it's at least part of our request, we still need more information in the absence of a tariff on how these costs are going to be allocated to the very large customer class in rate cases and riders that we don't currently have.
Commissioner Hom.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Schultz. Yeah, that's why I am going to strongly encourage Minnesota Power to work with the stakeholder to settle this issue, and then before July 15, if you can provide information. Why don't you just bring this in as a settled issue, because you have a very good guideline from our Xcel Energy tariff approval. So if you guys work together and bring that final outcome before July 15th or around July 15th, probably it can address your concern, right, Mr. Schultz?
Mr. Schultz.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hom, I think so. I think one thing I will flag is that I'm not sure that the current deadline for initial comments is tenable, July 21st. At this point, given where we are, I think you don't need to make any decisions on that today, obviously, but I just wanted to flag that there's likely going to be a request for an extension coming, just due to procedurally where we are. But we certainly have been, you know, reviewing the ESA, and we've sent initial discovery, but we think there's a lot more information we need.
Yeah, but that's why I'm strongly encouraging parties to get together, because this is about protecting ratepayers. We don't have to fight over things. We have to find best way to protect the ratepayers, so we can work together to make sure that we bring in right language to the table. Then I think you will get a lot more certainty than even as of now. So that's why I am suggesting that we are bifurcating it. Let the process go as it is, but we have a many different ways to supplement the information, because we haven't decided anything, we haven't discussed anything yet.
Mr. Schultz.
Yeah, I don't think I disagree with anything you said there. I just note that I do believe that we're going to need more time on the ESA given where we are and not having even a proposed tariff yet.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I understand your concern, but let's see how it goes. And I think today we are focusing on this baseline tariff issue, and this is another thing that legislature mandate every utility to file, investment utility to file by December 15th. So that's why I said we are different from other states on this issue. So once again, I strongly encourage everybody work together, bring the hopefully close to final tariff language by July 15th. That'll help everybody.
And Commissioner Hom, if I can also say, there's a process to request an extension in either docket, and so we hope that parties will also work together to come up with a timeline that could address everyone's needs, that maybe coordinates across these two different dockets. So encourage that as well, and if the company would want to include that in their initial filing, a proposed timeline that people can agree to, that would be excellent. If that's not possible, I understand. But I think given where we are, I feel like we can coordinate this going forward in a way that will allow for a very thorough review and full development of both dockets in a way that gets us to exactly the shared goal of making sure that we're protecting ratepayers and moving forward to serve this new customer. So I appreciate, Commissioner Hom, I appreciate your decision option. Commissioner Tuma, do you have anything?
Well, I have a few questions for the company, Ms. Rodin. This is probably the tougher thing. It's going to be a compliment, also a challenge. And we've had these conversations nationally with other organizations. I'm in SPP's Regional State Committee. We're dealing with large load questions, and a lot of commissions are struggling with what this looks like. And my example to them, and the tool that we've used in a lot of our discussions, has been MP, Minnesota Power. You have been, I think, a national leader on addressing large load problems because about 85% of your load goes to, was it 8 customers or something in that neighborhood. So you've had this large load question in front of you before, and it has informed, I think, us in how we've addressed it. So in a sense, when we say look to Excel, that was looking to you, okay, and what we've done in the past. And so you're ahead of the class, but also the challenge is when you're ahead of the class and you've done this before, I think the expectation is higher for us is how you deal with this. And there's a challenge. I realize the reality of this is that when your 8 big customers came together, it wasn't to protect the small ratepayers, it was protect them from each other, okay? And so I kind of see that happening maybe with Google here coming in. Everybody's trying to level set, and you got some big powerful companies, U.S. Steel and Cleveland Cliffs. These are not small players, and they're trying to figure out what is that appropriate alignment now with this very different looking entity, this high energy kind of customer, and how does that fit within that, I guess, ecosystem for that matter. And so we understand it is still a challenge, even though you've dealt with it before. Here is this new player that you haven't dealt with before, and you got these powerful interests. When I look at the statute 1622, I don't see anything new there. I think the legislature was basically saying, we see what you're doing, Commission. We want to make sure it's clearly laid out in the statute. And I think that was the legislative history here. But as I look at this, I don't see anything in here, maybe 2, where it says, set standards for our carbon free is basically what it's saying. But when I look at 1, which is make sure the large customers are not, that are exempt, are very large customers, they're subclass, well, we do that. 3 is, make sure that there's not stranded assets and that we're protecting the public interest. Those are things we've been doing for a long time with MP. And frankly, how that is separate from those pre-2040 or 2020, folks is a challenge too. I think we have to create a new one. And so, but I don't think it's going to look a whole lot different. So I'm kind of surprised you withdraw. So kind of give me your sense of why did you actually feel they needed to withdraw and start anew here, just so I can kind of have a preview of what we got coming up.
Commissioner Tuma, I agree with sorry, I'm getting a little bit of feedback here. I agree with your analysis and the rationale behind it, and that was the reason that we initially filed under the large power tariff and just wanted to amend it to modernize it a little bit. And the pushback we got was, largely from a lot of the other interveners in this docket, and we heard them and understood that they would rather have a entirely different class, an entirely different tariff. So when we're looking at the statutory requirements and applying it only to the new very large power customers, that would be a distinct class and a distinct tariff that would be easy to identify rather than having them lumped in with the large power and then having to separate out and figure out who's exempt, who's not exempt. And so by creating a new independent class and having a new tariff, I think it'll be a little bit more clear on that side. And so we understood the value in that. To your point, though, we have been doing this a very long time, and the existing customers that we have in the large power section, every time we come before the commission, we're demonstrating that any costs that are associated with those large power customers are being paid by the large power customer class, and that they aren't being subsidized by our other ratepayers, so our other retail ratepayers. So that was the rationale behind moving to and withdrawing right now and moving to a very large power tariff and independent one.
I think it's important for the public to know Minnesota Power has been doing this for a long time, and it was a difficult dance. These are not small companies. They could have built their own generation, but they came together and says, you know what, we're going to build Boswell, okay? And U.S. Steel, I don't want Cleveland Cliffs leaving me and being stuck with their 1/8 of the cost for Boswell. And so that's why they were willing to put forward and say, I'm willing to also cover my 1/8 for a period of time. And so now we're getting a 1/9 coming in, and I don't think the analysis from an ESA standpoint is going to be much different. We want to know they are paying their fair share. And that's the whole key to this, and we've been doing it for a while, and you've done that dance for, I don't know, ever since you've existed. I mean, I would think that's the dance that you have played, making sure that these large guys are confident that they're not going to end up paying for the other large guys' load. And the benefit for that, the residential folks who are the other, 1/8 of the formula, have benefited by some of the lowest residential rates in the country. And so we want to make sure that continues. And so that was my hope to hear that's what's happening, and that we're not having some kind of crazy new process coming forward, because I feel like we've done this dance before. We just have to figure out how to make sure you can continue to do the successful kind of balancing between these very large players. And so that's good to hear.
Thank you, Commissioner Tuma. Anything else from commissioners? Make a motion? Okay, Commissioner Hom.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion. So I'll move decision option 3 and 5 with the modification and inserting date July 15th, 2026, and Ham News 7.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Excellent. Thank you to the parties. And we'll move into item number 2. Give folks a minute, and then Ms. McShane, you can introduce the item whenever you're ready.
Chair Partridge and Commissioners. Item number 2 is docket number E015/M19766 in the matter of Minnesota Power's Reconnect pilot program. The question before the Commissioners today is, should Minnesota Power's Reconnect pilot program be made a permanent offering? Staff have no further remarks but are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McShane. So I will start by saying what a breath of fresh air it is to have a 1-star item on our agenda.
You just seem to pick it real quick, too, to do the motion.
Yes,
The
okay.
prerogative of the chair.
There we go. Everyone seems to be in agreement on this item, which is excellent that the company is asking us to extend their automatic reconnect pilot to make it a standard offering. Personally, I think this is something I expect for most utilities to do as we deploy AMI and have this capability. I thought the briefing papers gave a great explanation of why this is a good idea. I have one question for the department, which is related to decision option number 5, Ms. McAllister. This would ask the company to provide information that delineates the cost of the remote reconnections and versus the on-site reconnections. I was just curious if you still feel like you want that information and what you're looking for there.
Good morning, Chair. Commissioners, Jamie McAllister with the Department of Commerce, and I am going to phone a friend here. One moment.
No problem.
Sorry, Mr. Kundert, I believe, is online.
Okay, excellent. Mr. Kundert, welcome.
Good morning, Chair Partridge. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. I just had to double check. I don't use WebEx that often, so. The reason the department asked for that information is that originally Minnesota Power had provided a savings estimate over a 20-year life, and they redid that at one point. But we would just like to see the cost differential between, this is information that other utilities have provided. we were a little bit surprised that Minnesota Power had not ever provided, at least to my knowledge, had not provided that information previously. And we just like to see what the cost differences are. We're assuming they're going to be very substantial and it will actually support, remote reconnection. But it's just nice to get the actual information.
Thank you, Mr. Kundert. Can you introduce yourself just for the record?
Oh, sure. I'm John Kundert. I'm a financial analyst with the Department of Commerce.
Thank you. Well, that seems like a reasonable explanation, and I expect the same. So I was just curious to hear. Mr. Brodeen, do you have any objections to decision option 5?
Chair Partridge, Matt Brodeen on behalf of Minnesota Power, no objection to inclusion of decision option 5.
Excellent. Any other questions?
And I think this goes to Mr. Kundert. It's kind of the question when we get to the rate case, how much are they saving, and is it adding up? Obviously we're spending a lot on infrastructure, and it should be reducing the O&M, and so we just want to truth test that. That's my understanding, kind of why you need this data. Is that a fair assumption of what's going on, or?
Chair Partridge, Commissioner Tuma, yes, it goes back to that old economic principle of when you substitute capital, you can oftentimes, remove a certain amount of labor. And so as it becomes more capital intensive, we should see some kind of decrease in O&M costs and headcount, things like that.
And to that, Mr. Bodine, from the rate case, I looked at this and everybody looks at it and say, oh, 0, that's great. Let's don't charge for this. But that doesn't mean you're not going to collect for it, okay? And so the question that I have is it appropriate, and how much are we socializing? I pay my bills all the time, and now you have someone who is, going on and off and on and off. I don't know if you have that as, and they're now being, whatever cost it is now to push that automatic button is now being covered by the rest of the ratepayers who are paying their bill. Do you have an idea what that cost is? I know Excel, I think it was $13.50 they charged to push the reconnect button. So was there some thought going into why you're socializing now the cost of, pushing the reset button? It's a lot cheaper than driving a truck out there. I get that, but what was the thought that went into why you're suggesting that we socialize that cost?
Commissioner Tuma, the thought there is that if you look at our statistics for who is being disconnected, it's are more at risk, and the LIHEAP customers, the low-income, self-designated low-income customers, that when you tend to add on all of those charges and bills, it gets them into a situation of not being able to pay or non-payment anyway. So we have a lot of that going on. But the other issue is here. It really is. If you look at some of the briefing papers, it's a huge difference in how long it takes to go out and to manually reconnect somebody versus if you do it remote. So remote reconnect is minutes versus hours to go out and to do that manually, and you're not rolling out the trucks, you're not doing a lot of that stuff. So there's that savings. And then on the cost side, it's the AMI meters, the infrastructure. That's our standard right now. So it's a little bit of a different story than it was even when we started this pilot. Right now, we don't replace with the manual meters or anything else. Everything that goes out is AMI meters for a lot of different reasons, and they've been approved by the commission. I think that's the standard across the state with all of the others. So the incremental cost of this is going to be all of our customers, every single one of them. So it's not just being rolled out for reconnections. It's being rolled out for our entire, across everyone. So really the only incremental cost is that the few minutes to remotely go on and click a button and have somebody reconnected, which is pretty minimal. Overall, those costs are not going to be very significant. And if they're socialized, you're not going to see a real change in your bill.
Yeah. Help me out. This is what I imagine though too, and I figured that a lot of these reconnection costs are going to fall onto the low income, and whether that can be isolated or not. But I don't know if this is the case. You're Lake Country. if I have a cabin and I decide in the winter I'm going to disconnect my power, and then I call up and say I now want to reconnect it on May 1st, is that something you would have charged for in the past, or how would that work? Would you have to, I don't just want to. I don't want to pay the 6 months or 7 months of meter charge, and I want to reconnect. Is that now going to be free for that person who's at the cabin as they drive up from the cities in their big GMC Tahoe, and so how does that work?
Commissioner Tuma, I actually don't know the answer to that one. I don't know if there's a distinguishing between people who are involuntarily disconnected and then reconnecting versus people who voluntarily.
Most of us about involuntary, so that's what I didn't know how this works. If we put in number 4, we talk about the reconnect there, maybe just adding onto the sentence why it's appropriate to socialize the cost or something like that in your next race. Have that conversation so that we can have it. I know it starts to make sense. What we're saying is that it's going to be a lot less expensive. Well, Excel's charging $13. Maybe I shouldn't have them charging $13, or we have something that says for involuntary or for LIHEAP customers or something. We can think about that. It's a pretty small pittance. I know that, but I guess our job is to make sure the system is fair. So if I'm creating a lot of reconnections and I'm driving my Tahoe, maybe I should pay a little bit more for that meter that now is benefiting me more than it's benefiting someone who's on 24/7. So I'm thinking, Emma, on number 4.
Commissioner Tuma,
Yeah.
may I suggest we put it on 5, just because that's talks about data in the next
Actually,
rate
that's where
case?
the line. Yep, we could do either one. So yeah.
Okay. Up to you. I just think where that requires data in the next rate case.
I think I was doing
Okay.
the wrong place.
Okay.
It's right. My little scribbling is right between the two, 4 and 5, and I put it to 4 when I should have been putting it to 5. So at the end of 5, Emma, say the cost of the site reconnections and why it is appropriate to socialize this cost. You're kind of moving the and also there, but I know you're smart enough to figure that out, so I don't know why I'm telling you that.
Let me think here. Could it say in any potential cost shift
Good, yeah.
instead of, yeah, because it's just the minimal nature of the charge. I will note in Excel's last rate case, we did waive reconnection for low-income customers. So I think, Emma, Ms. Fazio, I'm just thinking like a broader discussion. Including the number of people who drive Tahoes from the Twin Cities and seek reconnection specifically. We want a head count in the year of their Tahoe.
And the color.
Any upgrades as well? Commissioner Hum.
Thank you, Chair Patridge. I think this is just more than the meter charges. I think it has to be more seasonal customer charges in different class, because they are not paying all other distribution system, transmission system cost if they are disconnecting it. So I think carefully check your tariff whether there is in that case, that customer has to be charged more during they have in service to compensate what they are not paying for remaining that time they are disconnected. I think it's not just simple connection and disconnection charges issue. It is more fairness of who's bearing existing asset. And I hope in that case there is a separate tariff for those seasonal customer. Otherwise, I think we may need to create the seasonal customer tariff to making sure that it's fair to other 12-month a year customer.
You're hitting right on what I was thinking about.
Okay. Ms. Fazio, would you mind just adding "and a discussion of," so that we have a more qualitative conversation, I think, in the record about that? Awesome. Anything else from commissioners? Any comments from the company or the department on this additional information that we're discussing here?
Chair Partridge, no, nothing additional.
The department is fine with this as well.
Okay, excellent. I'm ready to make a motion if everyone is ready. Okay, I move decision option 2, decision option 3, A and B, decision option 4, decision option 5 as modified, decision option 6, and decision option 7. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you to the parties. Commissioners, do you want to just keep rolling? Let's keep going. Yeah. It's going to be an early lunch, everyone. Just kidding. Shouldn't declare victory at this point. Okay. Commissioners, I spoke too soon. We're having some technical issues with one of our parties connecting online. So we are going to let's just wait until, what time is it? 10:40. And we hope that folks can get connected by then. Commissioner Tuma. We're back. We're back.
Like we're talking about Broad Avenue and
I mean, we can add it to the agenda. We didn't notice it, though, so interested parties are unaware. Okay, Mr. Noyce, go ahead and introduce item number 4, which is actually item number 3.
Yes. So, morning, Chair Partridge and Commissioners. Item number 4 is docket number E999/CI-20-800, involving the Minnesota investor-owned electric utilities in the matter of the Commission investigation on grid and customer security issues related to the public display or access to electric distribution grid data. The question before the Commission is, should the Commission implement the proposed grid data sharing framework and accept the report? We had a few late filed items from Xcel Energy, Dakota Electric Association, and the joint parties, as well as a set of preferred and revised decision options by Commissioner Tuma. All of these items have physical copies in the back of the room and are already in the record. We have representatives from Xcel Energy, Minnesota Power, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Commerce's contractor, Converge Strategies, Dakota Electric, Ottertail Power, and MnSEA on behalf of the joint parties, available for comment and questions. I have no further remarks, but I'm also available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noyce. Again, I don't think we have opening remarks planned for this item. I have, before we jump in, a clarifying question. Commissioner Tuma, I know you had 2 different sets of decision options. I have the June 24th set filed at 1 p.m. Is that the latest revised?
June 24th, 2 p.m. So I didn't know there were 2. So you're telling me something new. So I'm hoping they're
I believe there's just one set.
Okay, mine says 1 p.m. Just
Okay. I don't know where the 2 and 1 p.m., but I think they're the same.
I think they're the same. I hope they're the same because I haven't been dealing with 2 different documents. So
okay.
So if they're not, we'll find out.
They're the same. Okay. Excellent. All right.
You're asking a dyslexic to compare. It's like, oh, okay, little words moving around. Let me just give you my worldview on this, and then I want the parties just to tell me what they're thinking. So here's as I worked with Mr. Noyce to get a better understanding of this docket and remembering it from when we brought it forward to develop the kind of framework. You know, my hope is that we are creating an environment. I always go to my silly example of the birch room. You know, everybody should be working together, trying to figure out beforehand the issues, and I think that's what we're trying to create is an environment by which we can have these discussions, and there's an expectation that the utilities will listen to those discussions and try to figure out a way to make data available with the understanding that there is a huge security risk concern that we as a commission want to recognize and understand as part of our responsibility and our duty. And I think the report was very clear on that we as a commission want to make sure that we are not creating a system that is vulnerable to attack, and that there are bad actors out there trying to attack our system. And so that was the idea, just to try to create this kind of environment where people can come together. And so the report I thought was good, and so I wanted to take that report and accept it with a few modifications, and that is to make sure that the scoping meetings can happen, that they're expected to happen, but that parties can work through it and say, we don't need to do a scoping meeting. This one's a real simple one. I can tell you this information. And the same would be for security checks. I think we need to have that as a critical initial step. And so I don't want to take that away, and I don't want to have the commission think that they can make a judgment for the utilities. And so number 10, the security screening is meant to give the utilities that authority. It's their job to run the business, but they should be transparent in what that is. In whatever communications they create for people who want to use this data and get to it, it should be transparent what that expectation is, and when it should be in front of everybody should be right up front. but that doesn't mean that you can waive it. I think that's something the utility has to make the decision on. 13 was to adopt those additional things the joint parties wanted in what I call the 3-year analysis, and not to do an annual analysis, but to wait for let's just let this one work its way out and see how it plays out. And so we want the additional information, but we're not going to require it, every year kind of thing. And then also to confirm that timelines are a goal, not a requirement. 90 days for the utilities to come up with what they need to for implementing doing the filing, the compliance filing. Work group and the staff wanted to be terminated, and then also Dakota Electric, we're just trying to adopt the language to make sure we understand that our role and our relationship with you. We want you to continue to participate. You've been a good participant in this process. But we also have to understand that this is not necessarily a rate-regulated issue. So we didn't want to get into that. We just wanted to adopt that what you've been doing is fine, and if you want that blessing, yes, it's a blessing, but it's not us dictating it to you. We get what you're doing, and we don't view ourselves as, in this situation, dealing with a rate-regulated issue. But we also like having you in the process, and that was kind of the tenor of what 20 was trying to accomplish. So again, it is to create an environment where we have a working group that can act as a mediator if they so choose, but we're not going to dictate it and create it that way. I think this is a collaborative effort. It's creating that collaborative effort, and we hope that the utilities continue to do that collaboration to help work with and be that mediator. If we have to deal with it as a tariff issue or as a complaint, we will. But I can assure you the first question I will ask CIO, if it's potentially coming up our way, did they actually have a conversation with the working group, and is there a mediation team within that working group that was kind of spun up by them to try to address this? And to me, that would be a significant factor in analyzing the complaints that would come before us. So that's my worldview, Madam Chair, and then I want to just hear from the parties on the decision options, if they're comfortable with it or if they think there needs to be any change. I guess I would start with utilities first, but it's your call, Madam Chair. And go from there.
That sounds great. We can start with Mr. Dennison.
Thank you, Chair. Jim Dennison on behalf of Xcel Energy. Thank you, Commissioner Tuma, for putting together, I think, a thoughtful collection of decision options. I believe these are generally fine with Xcel Energy. We interpret your revised 16, the 90-day filing for an implementation timeline to include all aspects of implementation. Perhaps some further details on the background check, the application process, having a portal or not, and issues of cost recovery. With that understanding, your proposals look fine to us.
I didn't want to dive into cost recovery. Thanks for reminding me. I think you have your normal cost recovery mechanism, so I don't think we need to create something in this docket at this stage. You have your normal cost recovery mechanisms, and you'll come in front of us for them, and we'll address them as they proceed.
So I guess I'm not quite sure on that.
Make sure you're sure on that, yeah.
Okay, so if in our mind it would be appropriate to have an application fee for this data or a fee for the collection of the data, are you saying that's not in this docket? It's in a different docket?
It would be in a docket. You would come to us and say, we're going to charge a fee for this, okay? And it's going to be part of our tariff, and if it needs to be approved as a tariff, okay, then you would bring it in front of us. If you don't feel it's a tariff, it's if there's a way that you feel that you already have authority to do that. So we didn't want to get into, my understanding, talking to Mr. Noyce, was we didn't want to get into parsing out how that, making a decision on that fee or cost recovery mechanism. You have your tools to do that in front of us. So if you feel you need to come and charge a fee that needs a tariff change, that would probably be part of the compliance filing.
Okay. And thank you for that. Just to help scope it, if we were to build a portal to accommodate this, and that was contemplated, it could be, in excess of $1 million. And we'd rather have the commission approval of that and how we are going to recover before we build it. Because it could be the case, the commission could say, well, you shouldn't have used the portal.
And I think that's why our staff was saying, let's do it in 90 days, okay? You wanted to wait a year. We want to say, let's get it done. You kind of know what you're going to plan on doing. And correct me, Mr. Noyce, if I'm wrong, this is the way I understood reading it, is that give us what you plan on doing and make that filing in the compliance filing. And if you're going to ask for some sort of cost recovery or change to tariff or approval of a portal, that's something that the compliance filing would be addressing, right?
Correct. I'll specifically note a portal is not a required mitigation measure, and cost can be accounted for in the framework. So if cost is a concern, you are very welcome to consider costs.
Recovery is the concern, I think he has, not the cost.
And recover, yeah.
Chair or Commissioner Tuma, so this is an issue that I flagged as important, is that I personally don't want the cost of this process or framework to be socialized into rates broadly. Ms. Fazio, I had a proposed decision option that maybe we could work into the 90-day compliance filing, because I do think that depending on how the utilities work through this framework, there could be significant costs associated with either an upfront process or with individual requests, depending on how detailed those requests may be or how complex those are. So I worked with our legal team and drafted this up, that we could have the utilities develop proposals for consideration. We could put that within the 90-day compliance filing. Mr. Deniston or...
You're up first.
Yeah.
I don't see a problem with this. The way I look at it from a rate-making perspective, all of them are going to be between rate cases, and so this money is going to be coming out of their pockets.
Right.
So they're going to be wanting to set aside or do some sort of accounting for it. And so I think that's why Mr. Dennison wanted us to approve them doing that, because then they would slide it into their next rate case and saying, you approved this, and therefore we're doing it. I always felt like it's a small number, and so I don't have a problem with them doing the work now and then coming to us with a tariff or a fee increase at some sort to cover those costs. But they have to eat it until they come to their next rate case. But I agree with you. I don't want it socialized in the next rate case. I was just trying to keep from approval and giving them the sense that they have some sort of what I would call regulatory account, a deferred accounting type scenario. And I'll look to the department to give me their analysis and on that. But that's what I'm concerned about. I don't want to say, yeah, we approved you to expend this money and you can collect it in the next rate case.
Right. I think for me, it's just, we may see the companies get complex data requests off the bat. And so this would be a way to make sure that the cost causers, so the developers who are asking for information, are paying for the information that they are receiving.
I like the way you're framing it, because that's what we're asking them.
Right.
If you're going to do this and you feel you need to cover your costs, then you'd come up with a process for doing that, but it's not deferred accounting.
Right. And it's probably minimal, but if someone were to request a very complex analysis immediately and it costs the company quite a bit, it also wouldn't be fair for their costs to then get pushed on a future developer who has a more simple request later. So this would just sort of maybe handle it on the front end a little bit. If you have a better idea, I'm totally open to it. I just want to make sure that we're kind of proactive in thinking about the costs of this. Mr. Denniston, do you want to
I
weigh in?
appreciate the dialogue here, and your proposal here for revised 18 is fine with us, and thank you for that.
Okay, and Mr. Denniston and Mr. Brody and Mr. Heinen, the idea would be that this would just be filed along with the compliance filing in Commissioner Tuma's preferred decision options, kind of all together.
Chair Partridge, yes, Minnesota Power supports your revised decision option 18.
Mr. Heinen? Oh, Commissioner Hum. Mr. Heinen?
Chair Partridge, just want to make sure I'm in the right order here. Don't want to take away from one of the commissioners, but appreciate your soliloquy there, Commissioner Tuma, explaining decision option 20. Dakota Electric doesn't have any objections to Commissioner Tuma's revised decision options, and revised 18, Commissioner Partridge's, or Chair Partridge, excuse me, is acceptable to Dakota Electric.
Okay, Commissioner Hum.
You have someone on from Otter Tail? I didn't.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, go ahead. So you got a
Go
question?
ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's more fundamental question. This proceeding start very early, I think 2019-ish, right? Since then, we have a lot of changes like a proactive upgrade, reactive upgrade, so on and so on. So if nobody used this system after you create the portal, what happened to the cost recovery?
Mr. Denniston.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioner Hom. That's a great question. You know, if we spend, say, $2 million to build it, and each year we get one or two requests, you know, that doesn't make any sense. And so we spent a lot of time collectively in the work groups. But that's not necessarily indicative as to who would actually be participating in this way. So maybe that's an issue we can address in the 90-day compliance filing.
It's also a rate case question too. I mean, at some point, there's always programs that we spin up, and so you would look at us and say, "Hey, you made us go down this road, so you should help cover that $2 million that we're now eating or whatever." I mean, that's the discussion we usually have in a rate case. Anyways,
there are complex questions, right? And you know, we need to think about how to address that. And in our 90-day compliance, we'll come forward with the proposal.
Thank you. All right.
I don't know if the Otter Tail's
Commissioner
on.
Tuma, I cut you off in your initial question.
Well, that's okay, because this is important to have that in the discussion too. So I wanted that. I was just making sure that we just got
Sure.
all the utilities covered as well. I'm trying
Mr. Wickland is online. Mr. Wickland, do you want to weigh in on any of the questions we've asked of the utilities? And I apologize for not calling on you.
No apology necessary. Thank you, Chair Partridge. From Otter Tail's standpoint, we support the revised decision options that Commissioner Tuma has brought forward, and also revised 18 as it's been discussed. So thank you for the discussion today.
Great. Thank you.
department, I would guess, would be where I go to next. But
Ms. McAllister.
Good morning, Chair Commissioners. Jamie McAllister with the Department of Commerce. Generally, I think we are okay with 18. We did acknowledge that we thought that cost recovery was outside of the scope of this proceeding, but I will flag that I think we want to make sure that cost recovery is somewhat similar across the board so that we don't have one utility charging more for data than other utilities. So I think that would be a consideration that we'd want to factor in here.
Thank you, Ms. McAllister. Mr. Moberg, do you want to weigh in as well?
And Chair Partridge, to confirm on revised 18.
First of all, please introduce yourself for the record, and then if you want to weigh in both on Commissioner Tuma's slate of preferred decision options and then also the revised 18.
Chair Partridge, Commissioner Tuma, thank you. David Moberg from MnSEA on behalf of the joint parties, which is MnSEA and U.S. Solar, respectively. On the topic of Commissioner Tuma's preferred slate of decision options, we we appreciate this slate, especially appreciate your incorporation of the further reporting metrics, as well as designating the scoping meeting as an optional mitigation measure if necessary. I would like to flag something that we included in our reply comments, which is that specifically on page 3 of our replies, FERC, if you are trying to get access to CEII, which is Critical Energy Infrastructure Information, the way FERC does this is they have you file a statement of intent, essentially, and then an NDA. In order to get access to that information. So I would like to flag, and this is why we brought up the idea of proportional mitigation measures depending on the risk level of the data, that there is a situation where this framework and the preemptive background check could exceed FERC standards for access to data. That was a concern of ours. Generally, this framework being an additional obstacle to data that is already public or less prohibitive to access was a concern of our parties in the working group, and it continues to be something that we have concerns with this process. We absolutely support reasonable and necessary security measures in order to prevent malicious actors or improper access to data, but the idea of proportional necessary controls is something that we are focused on. On the topic of Commissioner Partridge's 18, I don't believe we are opposed to it. Obviously, we would need to see and respond to those 90-day proposals, but I think that is a reasonable way to examine this process.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moberg. I will say, to your point, I did have questions around the background checks. I didn't see a great description of what failing a background check means and who decides that. And I think there is a complaint process. I would think if that were an area where a complaint was made, I think that would be appropriate to come through the CAO, in part because of our ability to protect personal information and keep things confidential. But I think it is important that we keep this data secure, and we don't want information going to folks who have a background that puts them at high risk of releasing information that should not be released publicly or acting improperly with it themselves. However, there just wasn't a lot that I saw about what it means to do a background check. And if you do a background check, what triggers a failure? Is it any criminal background? Are there particular types of criminal background that would be considered as a failure or disqualifying of accessing information? I'm not sure, Mr. Brodeen, Mr. Deniston, one of the utilities, do you have a good understanding of what that would look like? Mr. Deniston.
Again, thank you, Chair, for the question. I think it'd be productive for us to address that issue in our compliance filing.
Mr. Brodeen.
Chair Partridge, I agree that we would need to think through that and address it in the compliance filing. I don't think we have anything set forth. There's no specific set of criteria that we have out there, and I don't know that we'll be able to come up with something exactly, because you never know what is going to come up in a background check, and trying to predict everything that might disqualify somebody, I think would be a little bit difficult, but I think we can work through it and provide at least an idea of here's the framework of what we would be working within in our compliance filing.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I'm kind of the opinion that we don't want to be too limiting in this area or define what it is. It's always been my philosophy in the cybersecurity space is that the minute we try to actually say something and create a standard, it becomes meaningless because things change so fast in this environment. You could have someone who has a perfectly clean background check, but then you find out that they are working for the North Korea. You have to go, okay.
They've received a potato chip bag full of cash.
Yeah. So, we want to give they have some pretty good, robust security teams. That's the privilege
Right.
I've had when I was doing the cybersecurity, is meeting their teams, and their teams are very robust, and they think through these things, and they're working with our folks that collect this data and are working with it, and they're thinking about these things, and that's why I didn't want to get us in there and say, here's a fail or not.
Right.
Once we start defining that, we get a little bit into that security space that we're not qualified to do, and so that's why I like this structure. We can see how it works. If we're seeing that they're, if Professor Chin is asking for information and he's been denied information, we go, wait a minute, that doesn't seem like a highly sensitive piece of information. You should be able to get that information to do, work in this space. Then we could see that, but we also don't want to create a situation where we're forcing them to open data up. That's how I've seen it in the past, but I'm always open to change, and that's, I think, led to this framework being developed at NARUC, and I think our trying to implement it in a way that creates kind of that place for people to come together and have that conversations informally is probably the best balancing that we could do.
Commissioner Hom.
Thank you, Chair Patrick. So yeah, once again, that I think a NARUC document was created some time ago, and I think last 12 months, we have a huge progress in the AI developments. And now AI can really digest information in different way that we used to think, and they can easily find the vulnerability quickly. So that's why I'm more nervous about this discussion than I think anyone else here. We may need to find different way to deliver outcome rather than data itself, because a lot of data used to be aggregated and it's very difficult to identify pattern of it. But with this help of the computer, I think people may be able to identify those patterns a lot easier than before. So that's why I think we have to be more careful in here than before. That's why I start with when we start this discussion, 2019. Since then, we have a huge change in the technology about how people can deal with the data. So that's why I think hopefully we have a different way of discussing it. I'm not going to discuss that here, but maybe in the IDP and other proceeding. I don't think a developer wants to have a raw data if they get certain outputs easily. So that's why I think hopefully we can find different way to deliver outcome that developer wants rather than giving them raw data. Getting raw data doesn't mean that they have all free pass and they have to do a lot of work to find out the outcome. So if they can have a different way to find that outcome, I think that they wouldn't ask for this data. So this is just for the setting the future discussion in like the IDP and other discussion, because we have to be more cautious about it. I think NERC and NARUC cannot, I think, proceed their things in the speed of the AI developments. I think that's why we have to be more careful on this.
So I will just say, Mr. Moberg, I am interested in what you're saying here in this argument, and I was thinking about this as well. I would hope in the annual reporting that you would be willing to provide a discussion or flag any issues that you're seeing, because this is such a tricky tightrope. I think we want to make sure that we're really protecting this important data. Want to also make sure that we're providing fair access. So I guess I'm just asking you to please, in these annual status reports, to weigh in if you feel like the background process is creating an overly restrictive barrier to accessing information. I personally don't think I feel like I have enough information right at this moment to make a different decision than what is in the framework, but I would like for us to, I think as Commissioner Hom has said, like we really need to make this iterative and be flexible as we move forward to make sure that we are getting it right as technology changes and advances, and as these data requests come in and we start to see what developers really are asking for and needing, So I invite you to please weigh in with us and know that I am very sympathetic to this issue that you've raised and want to continue to keep an eye on it. Thanks.
I'm ready to make a motion if you are, Madam Chair.
Those were my, Commissioner Hom.
Thank you, Chair Partridge. I have one little bit outside this scope, but I think I need to ask Mr. Hannon. So your distribution co-op, you are really looking for your members to have batteries, rooftop solar. You don't have any rate-based incentives. So I think I can ask you this question. So at the end of the day, let's say if company can provide, or your co-op can provide final outcome. Let's say if I go into my app and saying that, can I install 7 kW rooftop solar in my roof? Or can I install my 5 kW battery or level 2 charger in my house? Why can your company co-op can provide that information with very high certainty right away using your app? What is prohibiting you to do that?
Chair Partridge, Commissioner Hom, I guess the question is, why haven't we rolled it out into, we just changed billing systems earlier this month, or this year rather, and we have a new app. My marketing team would like me to say that we have an app, but I think that's a question of doing some more work on the back end where we'll be upgrading the SCADA and the other part of the background software packages. I think our goal in the long term is to have that ability within the app or on the website where it takes the need to contact us out. That obviously streamlines it. As it is now, if they contact member services or engineering and, this is my address, this is what I want to do, we can plug it into the system. My engineers aren't here, so I can't give the exact time frame, but it's pretty quickly we can say, a green, yellow, or red. That's kind of our hope at some point, that it could be transition to that app or website where that initial screening is able without having to make that contact to member services or the engineering department.
Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, that if we have that kind of information readily available, we may not need to deal with this data issue, because I think a lot of developers and individual your members only care about the outcome, right? Not necessarily data. And then at the end of the day, you are the one making final judgment on upgrade on the distribution system if your engineer find in your study that, oh, yes, we need to upgrade it. So final decision has to come from company no matter what. So I think developers or individuals who are trying to pursue this one still has a risk of not having good answer, even if they have this data and they run their own model.
Chair Partridge, Commissioner Hom, I would agree wholeheartedly with that. That's, from our perspective, it's, we want to have that conversation. If it's a developer, a load, an individual member, we want to have that conversation because we want to make sure that we give them the best customer member experience we can. If that means answering the questions to get the output, or what's beneficial for the particular developer, or what could be beneficial potentially for the entirety of Dakota Electric's membership. So we, I think I mentioned this to Commissioner Toom a couple years ago. If there's a site someone sees, we're here to answer the phone, or email or whatnot. We're ready to help out.
Thank you.
Are we ready for a motion?
I'm ready.
All right.
Madam Chair, I would move my slate of decision options that I filed on June 24th. 3, Tuma Revised 6, Tuma Revised 10, 13, 14, Tuma Revised 16, Partridge Revised 18, 19, and Tuma New 20.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you to the parties, and I look forward to the annual updates on this new process. And And with that, we are adjourned. Everyone enjoy your lunch. It is only 11:15. You might even be able to go take a walk before lunch. Thank you.